Hello everyone, this is Sandeep Singh, Assistant Professor, SHM Department, BBD University. In this video, we are going to understand about the different breads fault which occurs while making a bread and the equipment which we used in bakery. So, in the previous videos or the previous lecture for the second semester syllabus, Unit 3rd, Baking Science, we have already understand the ingredients which was used in making a bread. Then we have understand in a second video the steps involved in making different types of bread and the process involved in making different types of bread. After this, now we need to understand what faults, what remedies, or what things we do due to which the breads will get destroyed. We need to understand bakery is such a thing. If we have done something wrong in very first stage of making a bread, then it is quite impossible for anyone to get correct that particular batch of items, and it will cannot be corrected. So it is very much important when you start making a bread. All the vital steps, all the steps, all the ingredients need to be cross checked thoroughly, and then the steps to be followed very quickly. Any disturbance in anything will lead to the defaulted breads. So before we start with the different faults appears in the breads, we need to have some discussion regarding the equipment we generally use in the bakery part. There are some major equipment which we use in the bakery. The first most important part for the bakery is weighing machine. The weighing machine should be very much corrected. There is a 0.00 negligence. If there is a variance in the weighing part, if you want to use only 0.1 gram or 10 grams of yeast, but due to some fault in the weighing machine, it lead to the excess use of 2 grams of yeast, the product will be devastating. You cannot control the damage done by that improper weighing of the equipment. So we need to focus on that we need to be very much particular about the equipment used in the bakery. Weighing machine is the first and foremost important thing. Then we have bowls, and these are the some small equipments. Then we need to have a bowls where we can mix the dough, where can keep the ingredients. Then we have for mixing, we need to have wire whiskers for a small portion, making of small portions of thing. Then we need to have a proper tables that are cooled in nature, so that the functioning or kneading of dough can be done by manually if you want to do it. And we need to do some punching and knocking back by taking out the dough. So we need a proper marble tables or SS tables which are neat and clean. Then we need to have a scrapper is the thing which is used to take out the all scrap, because dough are very sticky in nature. As they stick, they destroy they make the area very dirty. So we need to, and definitely the quantity will also come. If they stick here and there, the quantity will also become less. So we need to take it out very well. Then we need to have a proper measuring jar for using of liquid substance like milk and water. Basically milk and water are the liquid substance which we use. Then we have some big equipment which we used in is bakery is the dough kneading machine. Dough kneading machine are very heavy equipment, and that you can mix a dough up to 25 to 30 kg, or there is big dough kneading machines are coming which can mix together a final weight of near about 30 to 40 kgs of dough. So that is also dough kneading machine is very much important. Then we have dough kneading machine. After the dough kneading machine, we need to have big proofing chambers, where the bread at a stage, the bread needs a proper temperature, controlled proper temperature, where the bread can be rest and the yeast can do their last stage of working. So they need proper proofing chambers. Then we have the biggest equipment which we need is the ovens. Nowadays our ovens are coming with various options like gas and some ovens are run with the gas, some ovens are coming with the electric, where you can easily control the temperature of the electric oven. Rather than in gas oven, it is quite difficult to control the temperature of the gas oven. Then nowadays uh, people are liking the old traditional ways of wooden charcoal based oven, where the woods are fired and the temperature get, but there is a possibility that the temperature cannot be controlled easily. Only the experienced person can check and control the temperature in wooden and oven fire. So this is the oven. Then we need a very small equipments like tray, molds, scrapers, butter papers, and mats, so that we can do all our working. So these are some basic equipments which we need in a bakery for making a breads. So in this video now we are also discuss about the various fault which can be occurred while making a bread. So before knowing the faults of the bread, we try to understand what are the bases on which we decide the quality of bread. The first quality or thing which we decide that this bread is good or not is the volume of the bread, the heaviness, the weight of the bread. Breads are basically like loaves. The loaves are, they are not very too much in weights. If the proper weight of the bread is near about 55 gram, it should be a 55 gram, but it is crossing around 40 60 or 65, then definitely there is a problem that breads are very dense inside. The fermentation or the cooking or the baking is not done properly. Then bloom of crust, the crust should be desired a crispy crunchy crust and a blooming crust. If the breads are not coming up with the shine and it is dull, definitely the baking and the temperature of the baking is not properly. Then we have generally shape lines. If shape is not come perfectly, it is not up to the desired shape which we required. The color of the crumbs, the crumbs of the bread, their whiteness, their color also decide the quality of bread. Then the evenness of the texture, that the bread should look like same from one end to another end. uh, Moisture contents of the bread and the flavor of the bread, these are the some points on which we can decide the various quality of the judge. Now coming with the faults, what are the faults generally occurs while we do or we follow the various steps of making doughs. The first one is skinny dough. The skinny dough is nothing. What happens that if you make a dough and the dough is not covered with the moisture content and the area which is nearby you having a very dryness and the water and the evaporization done, the dough will become make cracks on the top, that skin, cracked skin on the top, and that it is very difficult to eliminate that skinny things. Like what if you make a dough and it is not covered with the moisturized towels or paper, and you have kept the dough where the moisture humidity is more and the dryness is more, and the dough's dryness come out has came out, then it becomes very difficult. It develops a type of skin on that and the cracks on the dough, and that cracked skinned is very difficult to remove. So it is very much important that when we making a dough, we need it to keep in the moist content area where the moisture of the dough cannot be lost. So now what happens generally, what happens when mold dough pieces become skinned, it will give an unsatisfactory bloom of the crust. Also there will be a number of bursts on or flying tops. You can understand that if these cracks are developed and we baked it, first of all the bloom, or the glow of the crust does not come, the texture of the crust does not come uniformly. And what happens, you will find out due to these things, the cracks were developed easily, and you will find out there is a pores and the holes on the tops, that also known as the flying tops. Then we have breads from unfermented dough. What happens if the dough does not get the full fermentation time and the yeast does not work properly? Then what will happen? The flying tops and you can say unshapely dough, you will find out there the dough somewhere it is having a good fermentation or having good size, and the other way where you will find out it is not having a proper shape, or it is dull towards to the comparison to the other part of the bread. Then lack of volume is means the moisture content get more evaporated, the moisture content is more lost. So where is the normal standard of losing of a moisture content while baking is near about 10 to 13%, but it leads to more than 13 to 15% or to 20%. So there is a lack of volume. Then uneven texture, showing large irregular holes. You will find out there is and due to the unfermented dough, you will find out somewhere the fermentation is done so well that the protein are not able to make the structure form, and while baking it will develops a crack or hole, or somewhere you will find out there is a so dense texture, so dense texture that you will find out that the dough is look like a uncooked raw flour will be appeared there. So this is what happen when you have the bread unfermented, or the dough which is not properly fermented. Then definitely it leads to the definitely it will lead to the lack of flavors and aroma, definitely. So this is what the we need to understand, that the dough should get proper time to be fermented, so that rapid fermentation or any other process or steps is involved. If it is involved, then it leads to the these disformalities in the breads. Then we, because the gluten needs a proper time to develop and make a strands or a structure which can trap the CO2 properly and give a physical structure to it. If it is not done, then either it make a dense or the breads like look like uncooked, or it may or it if it is overdone, or if it is somewhere it is not mixed properly, then definitely it the gas which was created is go and make a large hole. So that's why it is very much required that the breads get proper fermentation time, so that it can be easily fermented all around the area. Then we need to know about the breads from over fermented dough. What are the problems we got if the yeast was excessively used, or the food of the yeast is given too much, that they activated very much fastly and do their action of fermentation, whatever they have demanded, whatever the required demand is there, they do it more. Or somewhere we have forgot to put salt or something that does not allow the bread to control their yeast working. So what happens again? Lack of volume, because over fermentation will leads to the finishing of all the physical structure, and the maximum CO2 is produced, and this CO2 leads to the lack of volume. As we bake, the maximum of the gas will come up, because over fermentation will also lead to the dissolution or dissolution of protein strands, and that cannot help them to trap the air. So there are chances of making of big holes. So this will leads again loss of lack of volume, that desired volume cannot be obtained. Lack of crust, color or bloom, again same things. Either you do the over fermentation, either you do the under fermentation, both things will be happen. And yes, one more important thing in this is you develop the acidic flavor in this bread, and due to which the final product of the bread gets spoiled very easily, because the CO2 which was produced by the yeast, the some other byproduct was also produced by the yeast. If it is not controlled, this lead to the uh, lead to the acidic thing which was already present in the flour, and this will lead to the addition of that thing, and this will give a unpleasant flavor and easily spoilage of the bread. Then we have fault from incorrect proofing. What happen if underproofed bread is baked or overproofed bread is baked? Now we read, unless the dough is given a sufficient time to proof, there will be a lack of volume unless the oven is very cool, which again will cause problem like excessive drying out, leathery crust, etc. If the bread is underproofed and we put this underproofed bread into the oven which is not obtained the maximum temperature, the temperature desired by the bread to be cooked, what happens, they give leathery textures and excessive drying, because as much as we put the dough in a oven which has not obtained the temperature, the timing of the baking of the bread will increase, which unnecessarily leads to the loss of excessive amount of moisture content in this. So again it will lead to the flying tops, the crust is not similar, the texture will not come, the you will find out this leathery texture. So this is what happens. Overproofed bread, again it is very difficult to describe the ideal movement when the bread is loaded into the oven. Generally this is decided, this proofing is done in the proofing chambers. So we need to know that we need to understand that proofing chambers moisturizers must be worked properly, because these moisturizers provide the desired moisture content which was required by the breads to be proofed and cooked. So it is very difficult to describe the ideal moment when the bread is loaded into the oven. Generally this is decided by looking at the product or by pressing it. So we need to cross check during the proofing chamber that the desired proofing or desired shape is reached by the product or not. Then we have bread baked in a very hot oven. If the bread is baked in very hot oven, what happens, the cracks will become, the proofing which was done up to the desired, due to the excessive heat, the excessive loss of moisture will lead to the burst of the crust of the breads, and the gas which was trapped with it will come out, and you will find there is a large of holes present in the breads. So it is not you will definitely does not get the desired interior or desired texture inside texture of the bread. So it is very much important for all of us to understand that the temperature should be up to the desired temperature which we need. Sorry. Then we have bread which are cooked in a cool oven. So if there is a no desired temperature in the oven and we put our product, so the first thing which will happen is the loss of moisture contents. There is a huge loss of moisture content, because the temperature which is present in the oven still it is cool. The cool means does not having a desired temperature, but having a temperature will lead to the loss of moisture content, will definitely harms the bread. So it is very difficult, it is very then again this will lead to not properly baking of the product, and the air which is trapped in that will become condensed and make the does not make the proper crust, does not able to develop the proper crust. The inside texture will be leathery texture, because it look like that it is not cooked properly, and definitely the CO2 which was produced in that and the yeast which was there, might be chances all the yeast does not killed on that particular temperature, which leads to the further degradations of the bread when it was cooled and packed into the packing things. So the temperature, if does not reaches to the proper, this also lead to the faults of volume, desirable crust. So we need to understand these are the uh, external fault, you can say these are the external fault. It is not developed in the bread, but it is developed due to the physical temperature or physical demand required by the required by the dough. Then we have rope. Rope is one of the main disease, or you can say one of the major fault occurs. It is a type of bacteria which is already present in the uh, flour, but when this sugar content and the yeast content and the byproduct of the yeast mix with the rope, there is chances they are able to make more acidic thing, and this acidic thing will become more problematic for the dough. Generally what happens, this is not apparent until the bread is some hours old. This developed in the form of patchiness and the crumbs become sticky. At the same time, a peculiar odor similar to that of pineapple develops. This will occur only when the spores is given suitable conditions for it to develop, increase, grow, and so produce an attack of the disease. The conditions include vomit, moisture, and a deficiency of acid in the medium. Spores cannot develop in an acidic medium. Also, as the spores require warm weather rather than the cold weather, it becomes even more important to cool the bread quickly and completely. As I told you that the ropes, they need a proper temperature to develop, and they need a proper food to develop, which they are already present in the flour, which cannot be removed, but at suitable temperature they were killed. But if they get a desired temperature and the food to grow and work, they will work. And the food, basically in the alkaline medium, they are killed. They are not able in the acidic medium, they are not able to work. That's why the salt plays an important role to kill these types of bacteria also. It after getting and the acids, the byproduct of the yeast, which is CO2, and some of the acid which was produced, they killed these bacteria. These bacteria, generally what they do, they you will does not able to see the immediate effect. You will see their effects while the bread is cool. You will find a smell. You will find out the bread is very sticky and very heavy in nature, and you will find out that there is some order is coming which is not desirable for the breads. So, and the bread get spoiled after cooling, after packing. So it is very important that after baking we need to get the bread or the product cooled quickly according to the temperature, so that the oven, during the oven process it was killed, the ropes can be killed, and during that cooling temperature they can also be killed. So this is what some of the remedies and general remedies or general fault which we occur, and these need to be take care of while processing the while following the steps. So in the end, in this slide we are able to know, in this video we are able to know the faults and the equipment used in the bakery. Here some brief of the general fault and their causes due to which they cause. First fault is shape, poor volume, too much of salt either, too little yeast, too little liquid weak flour, under or over mixing, or oven too hot. So the reason for getting a poor volume, either you have put it too much of salt, that salt have killed the all the yeast and they are not able to work it properly. Either you have put the little of yeast, again it is very much important. If you have put it the yeast not up to the standard recipe, they are not able to produce the CO2, proper CO2 which they want, which lead to the fault of poor volume. Too liquid, too little liquid weak flour means you have not given a proper liquid to the weak flour, and they are not able to develop the protein strands which cannot able to trap the CO2. Then under or over mixing, that the dough is not properly mixed. You will find there somewhere the yeast and salt are there, and somewhere you will find out the yeast and salt are not there. So mixing of the dough is also important. Sometimes oven is too hot, that they have killed and destroyed the strands of the protein, and due to which the gas which is trapped in that it will come down quickly, which makes a hole, and this make the volume uh, not up to the standard. Then we have too much of volume, means very heaviness. Again the same reasons are there: too salt, too little salt, either too much of yeast. Here comes the too much of yeast. If you get the heavy dough, because all the gas which was trapped suddenly fall down and you will get the heavy texture. Too much dough is scaled. Either you have done the scaling of the desired product above the demand of the requirement. Like if we need a 55 grams of weighted dough, and we have done the 75 gram of the weighing of that. So during the weighing step, it is very much important for all of us to understand that the weighing should be done properly. Then we have poor shape, too much liquidy flour, too weak, improper molding or improper fermentation. So the shape which we does not get properly, the reason behind that is might be we have the very liquidy texture, or during the panning and the proofing, on the second proofing we called it second proofing. During the second proofing, what we did, we have done the overproofing, and we does not able to get the desired texture, and we have not checked during the second proofing in the proofing chamber that they does not get the proper chamber. Split or burst of crust. The over mixing or a fermented dough will lead to the burst of crust. So we need to understand that the dough are mixed or fermented properly. Then we need to understand oven too hot, insufficient steam. If the bread is cooked in too hot or very much hot ovens, and the moisture content is very less, then it leads to the difficulty. It's lead to the difficulty that due to improper moisture content, it develops a crack. The texture and the crumbs, too dense or close grained. Texture means a very dense texture is due to the too much salt, too little liquid, too little yeast, unfermented or underproofed dough. Too porous or open means the bread is having a pores or big holes or pores, or very light texture. The reason: too much yeast, too much liquid, incorrect mixing timing, improper fermentation. Anything which we have, I already said again and again that if you done anything which is not written in the recipe, will lead to too much of yeast, will produce too much of CO2, too much of liquid, will produce make not allowed gluten to develop properly and make us strands. Incorrect mixing timing of salt, incorrect mixing timing of yeast will lead to the improper fermentation, or overproofing or underproofing will lead to these types of textures: poor texture, sticky texture. So crust too dark. If you have used the too much of milk or sugar, the fermentation when you baked it, it will lead to the caramelization, and the crust will develop too much dark. To get too thick flavors here, too thick, too little sugar or fat, improper fermentation, baked too long for a or at wrong temperature, too little steam, blister on crust, too much liquid, improper fermentation, improper shaping of loaves. This will lead to the various fault. This is flavor: flat taste or poor flavor, too little salt, inferior, spoiled or rancid ingredients, poor bake shop sanitization, under or over fermentations. So flavors is also affected by the breads. If you have too much used salt, you will find out the flavor is not up to the desired product. Or the producing of rancid, which was already present in the wheat flour, it was rancid. If it is get a temperature or food, it will produce more rancid, and that will lead to the improper way of dough. So this is all about the major factors, major faults in the breads. In this slide, I have shown you the basic major issues like texture, volume, flavor, and what are the reasons. The reasons are almost very much common.